For this week's lesson, we are going to be learning how to make these beautiful birch trees. For the background, I used watercolor paint. If you don't have paint, you can just use a solid piece of construction paper. And for the birch trees, you are going to need a little bit of black paint and the secret trick, a little piece of cardboard. Follow along. For our birch tree project, we're going to be needing 2 pieces of white construction paper. You are going to need a little bit of black paint to make your birch trees. For your background, it's really up to you how you want to do it. I'm going to paint mine with some watercolor paints. I have these neon paints here. You could also just use crayon for the background. You don't need to do anything fancy, but you don't want your paper white. Otherwise, it's going to blend in with your birch trees too much. You could even just use a solid piece of construction paper. So I kind of like to create that kind of sunset look in the sky. So I think I'm just going to do red, orange, yellow. Pretty simple. So I'm painting the top, my reddish tones. These neon paints really pop, which is nice. And then I'm going to fade that into my orange. I'm going to put some orange right on top of that red to kind of blend it while it's still wet. And now I'm going to go to my last color, which is going to be the yellow. And again, I'm going to put some of that yellow in that orange to blend it so that it, instead of looking just like stripes, it looks more like a gradation, which means the colors kind of blend into each other. All right, so now my background is done. I'm going to set this paper aside to dry, and I'm going to bring my clean white paper to start our birch trees. I absolutely love this technique for making birch trees because it's so simple, but they look so realistic. So you are going to need a tiny bit of black paint. So any type of liquid paint should work. If you only have watercolor, that will probably work too. And I'm going to explain how to use that. Instead of using a paintbrush, we are going to be just using a little piece of cardboard. And this is going to give us that really realistic birch tree look with the black and white stripes. So I just cut out a little piece here. You do not need a lot. But if you look at the cardboard, you will notice that there are 2 different textures. One side will have the zigzags on the inside, and the other side is just going to be like kind of straight. You want to make sure that you are putting the paint on the side that has those zigzags. So I'm going to take that side and I'm going to dip it in my paint. Now, right now, I have way too much paint on there, so I'm just going to tap it off on my plate. This project, a little paint goes a long way. So I'm going to take my cardboard, I'm going to hold it on my paper, and I'm going to pull, and you can see I have those nice black and white lines, and I'm just going to keep going. And you can push hard on some strokes, soft on others, and that's going to give you that very realistic birch tree tones where some have a lot of black showing, some only have a little. So I'm going to get a little more paint. Remember, a little goes a long way. This one's going to be a little skinnier. And you want to make them go all the way from the top to the bottom. So I'm going to go do like 5 or 6 birch trees on this paper. They do not take a long time. You can even turn over that cardboard to get. Now, if your tree is not perfectly even, if it's skinnier in one part and fatter in the other, don't worry. When you cut it, you can even it out. So that does not matter at all. And this one I got a lot of black, but that's okay because some birch trees are like that. They're very heavy with the black. Some have barely any at all. And I think I have room for one more. Get a little more paint on my brush, which is really just a piece of cardboard. Perfect. And I'm going to wait for these to dry. My background paper is dry and so is my birch trees. So now all we have to do is cut out our trees and assemble them where we want. So some of these I am going to leave as whole trees. And some of them I'm going to actually cut down and put into branches. So I'm just going to start by just trimming these guys. So I think I'm going to glue down 5 of these guys as is, and those or 4 of these, sorry, 4, and then those remaining trees, I'm going to go and cut those into branches. So put a little glue on the back. This glue does not want to stick to this painted background. Sometimes that happens with certain brands of paint. If that is happening to you, just use a little bit more glue stick, or you can go ahead and switch to liquid glue, but the glue stick will still work. You just sometimes need to add a little bit more. So I'm gonna put 2 right there. And then I'm gonna do this guy closer to this side. And then this skinny guy is gonna go right in the middle. Okay, so now I have my trees glued on, and you can already see there's just so much contrast because the background is all colors, but the trees are black and white, so that looks really nice. So now these guys are not going to stay in their tree form, but they are going to be trimmed. So I'm going to start with thickish branches, and then I'm going to cut some down even smaller. So follow along. I'm going to speed it up so you can see how I apply my branches. So now I have glued all my tree trunks and all my branches down, and I'm pretty happy with these birch trees. Now, if you want to kick it up a notch, you can always add more things into the background. When we do this in class, we cut out some little construction paper birds and add them onto the trees. You could also draw some flowers at the bottom, or you could leave it just as is. This is another project that would look great if you did it 2 or 3 times the exact same way, but just change the colors of the background, and those would look really nice next to each other. So good luck making your birch trees.